Good morning. Ooh. Ooh, ooh. I'm a little bit early this morning. That's all right. Today we're going to be making this. Looks like I've got a piece of metal. The things I find on my table. I don't know what that came from. So we're going to be making this friendship star. This is my setup. I have my old featherweight. This will burn your hand. And then for quilters that this is a really big thing. Light is a really big thing. I have just a cheap desk lamp light and my cheap sewing machine light here. I sew at a buffet and I stand at this buffet. I have this mirror back here which reflects any light in the room. So I am in a corner. It's probably the darkest corner in the room. And then the light is back here kind of over my shoulder. And so this is a very dark spot. When you are quilting, whether it's at your sewing machine or at a long arm, if you pay attention, people like Angela Walters and stuff have a whole wall of mirrors. It reflects light, so whatever lighting you have, you get twice as much lighting. And when I would stand here and quilt, because I had my Janome, which has the great big head, it was very, very dark over here, and that I could actually position the light down, and then it would reflect back under here to where I could see a whole lot better. So those of you getting interested in your setup, I recommend getting a mirror. If you have just like a sewing machine cabinet, this also is perfect for quilting under your domestic machine, because this acts as a stop. So if your quilt falls off the back, it's not going to pull and all of a sudden you have a jerky movement under your needle. This has worked really good for me. I have quilted king size quilts at this table, and then if I'm doing something real big, I'll actually pull out this drawer underneath here, and it'll actually hold the quilt around me so that I can pull it. And anyway, today we're not talking about that though. We're talking about Friendship Star. Good morning, everyone. By the way, my name's Dawn. Welcome to my channel. Okay. Are y'all here? Are y'all still sleeping? I probably still have sleep in my eyes. I had insomnia yesterday, and I woke up at about 3 in the morning, and my normal time to get up is 5. And I laid there and I laid there and I laid there, and so I just went ahead and got up and went into work early. And man, the drive into work, it killed me. I almost fell asleep. I don't know how many times. I'm really tired today. So we're going to be making this. Basically, you'll just need a straight edge ruler and an easy angle ruler. This ruler is amazing. This is how I cut all my half square triangles, and it works great. I don't know if any of you read the description and went ahead and went to my website, but I'm giving away this pattern. I mocked up a simple pattern. It's nothing professional, but and it gives you all the instructions you need, and I will go through that right now. So you need a strip that you designate you want as your star color, and a strip of neutral. Let's see. Let's go ahead and we'll pick the this one. Very random, very scrappy. No, does not go together. My quilts are scrappy. It doesn't matter. Once you get all the scrappiness together, you're not going to notice orange to blue. I will say this, that ideally I would like all of these to be scrappy, but to save myself time, I just pick a strip and then cut my half square triangles all at the same time, and then I make these scrappy. And yeah, it does look kind of funny when you make these into a row. This actually will create like a strip if this fabric is too dark, so just pay attention to that. And yes, I use grays, I use pastels, I use tans, I use ecru's, and yes, I have prints in those, so there's no rules on scrap quilting. You can use whatever you have. All you're looking for is contrast to the star. So this, obviously there's a big enough contrast here. If I were to have this here, it would still have contrast. Perhaps, let's see. I've got a strip here, let's see. So if I made my friendship star out of this, yes, this has contrast, but probably this is more because of this color being so close to this. Maybe that's too monochromatic. I don't know. But we'll find out because I'm going to be making that one too. So let's get started. Okay, sorry, walking back to the back of my iPad. Okay, so let's move these a little bit out of the way. With right sides together, I'm going to lay my two strips on top of one another. And let me angle this down. And I know that the way that this ruler works is if I start off with a 2.5 inch strip, I know that that's going to equal me a 2.5 inch half square triangle. So I find my 2.5 inch line, and where's my rotary cutter? Hang on a second, let me go get my rotary cutter. Good morning, Patty G. Thanks for coming. Alright, so I'm going to line up my 2.5 inch line, and the line needs to be on the fabric, not against it, but on it. And I want to utilize as much fabric as I can. I'm going to bring this down a little bit, and then I'm just going to trim off. What I've got is a pinked edge, and I've actually got interfacing on this blue, but that's okay. Okay, one cut, two cuts. Those are my scraps. Then I'm going to turn it, and I'm going to line up my line on my previously cut line. This is where I have problems. My eyes don't want to see this. Alright. And if you'll notice, this black spot at the tip also lines up with the edge of the fabric. You get those two lined up. If your seam is the correct size, your seam allowance is the correct size, these should come out perfect. Okay, so there's two, we need four. So let's make another cut. There's three, and then the last cut. And see, my light cast a funny shadow. Okay. Alright, so I've got 4, and this will be a scrap that I can put, and I can just cut a 2.5-inch square right now, because we can utilize this in another block. And again, when you cut, line on, and then there's my scrap, and I'm going to toss this and this. I don't keep these, so those will go in the trash, and then that will go in another block. And let's see, do I have enough for another 2.5-inch square? Ooh, I'm gonna miss out. Dang. Okay. Ideally, you want the square to match. We can cut it any color. I've got some blue here. Let's see. That might affect the next strip. Let's see. Yeah, that'll affect that star. I've got some of this fabric in the other room. Let me go get it, and I'm gonna cut some. Hang on. Alright. Sorry, guys. I knew whenever I cut this out that I was cutting it close, but I didn't know it was going to be that close. So, and the great thing is if I go to the trouble of cutting my strip just for a small piece, a 2.5-inch square, I have this left over. And so the leftover will go in my cup of scraps, which is that 2.5 inches? Yeah. So this is a little bundle of 2.5 inches, and I'll put it in there, and then it'll be ready for me whenever I go to really make a scrappy one. A less controlled scrappy. So we have those cut. Oh. These are my scraps, and I'm going to go ahead and cut that from my bucket and set it aside. And again, line on. It looks like I got a little bit of selvage in the seam allowance, but that's okay. Another scrap. And then I'll just set that over here for later. Alright. And so now I need to sew my HSTs. Let me reposition the camera. Well, I guess it looks alright. Okay, it's fine. And those of you who use leaders and enders, I've done that before. I find I just hold my thread tails, and my vintage machine will not knot off. I have this set to scant. We'll see how good I do. Let's see. I've got my iron ready. Normally my iron's in the other room, but for today I brought it in here. I'm just butting this up against my seam gauge, which by the way is just a busted ruler that I drilled a hole in so that I can position my seam allowance. And all of my pieces are pre-starched, and today it's really humid and it's gonna rain. So alright, I've got 3 of them done. One of them's still under the needle. I'm gonna conserve my thread and make my next seam, and then I'm gonna finger press. It looks like I got a little sloppy on this one. Y'all have any questions so far? And because I've pre-starched it, whenever you run on the bias, it's not going to stretch. Alright, let's see my report card. Let's see how well I did with my 2.5 inch square. Okay, it's a bit wonky. I know I'm going to be trimming off the dog ear, so this one looks like it can be trimmed on all 4 sides. Sometimes it don't pay to get up. Alright. And whenever you square this up, just use your line here and line it up on your seam. Alright, so now we have a 2.5 inch square. We've actually got 3 of them. Let's see how well I did on this one. This one's still wonky. That one just basically needed the dog ear trimmed. And you can fudge on this and just let this go, and you figure out whenever, because my next part of the piecing is going to be laying this on top of a 2.5 inch square. When I lay it on there, I'm going to know exactly how to fudge the seam allowance, so maybe this step isn't as necessary. Let's see. This one's pretty whoppered. So, yeah. Yeah, this one's really whoppered for whatever reason. Sometimes I think my vision, I've got a distance problem in one eye. I know I have stigmatism in one eye. And my stigmatism has gotten really bad. And I've got an appointment to go get some glasses, so hopefully that'll help. I find that my depth perception, I can really tell that my depth perception is kind of screwy whenever I'm doing some things, especially quilting at the machine. Okay, so let's get some scrap and lay out our design. You're going to need 4 neutral scraps. They can be whites, they can be tans, whatever neutrals you got. You can also make your neutrals a black. That always makes for a very striking quilt. Okay. We're going to put this in the middle, and now basically it just remains we need to sew a 9 patch. This is where you decide how you want your star to spin. So let's see if I can lay this out right. Okay, so this star is spinning in this direction. I laid this out, it's spinning in the opposite direction. Maybe if you have a row of these that go this way, you can build another row in your quilt that spin the opposite direction. This is totally up to you how you want your star to spin. I'm going to spin mine like that. As soon as I make this first seam, I'll come back and I'll trim that up and then lay it in. Alright. Good morning, good morning. Alright, so let's see how well I did on this one. It might be that the interfacing that's on the back of this is actually interfering. We'll see on my next one how well I do. Some days I just don't have it. Alright. It looks like I'm square on this side, but the 2 other sides, get rid of that. And yes, if you look, I've got a spot right there. That's all going to be hidden in the seam allowance. As long as I've lined up that line, it's not going to matter. Alright, so now I have my grid. I'm going to start sewing my rows. And if you can tell, I'm a pedal to the metal kind of sewer. I always press as hard as I can on my pedal to get the most speed out of it as possible. those of you who have a featherweight that does not sew fast, you need to have your husband, or you can. There is a spot at the belt, well, between the belt and the motor and the machine, and there's a screw head. All you got to do is reposition the screw head, and you can adjust your belt. If it's in a bind, the belt will not be as fast. So, all right. So if you noticed, I finger pressed, which look how flat they are. I'm just finger pressing, and my block is already flat. I'm going to finger press to all the squares. So when I sew these two together, I'm going to finger press my seam that way. This one's that way. This seam is this way. And so whenever I get this all done, if I've done it right, I'll be able to spin my seams. Okay? Doesn't really matter. You don't have to do that. I find it frustrating whenever I'm making several of these and I go to nest them together and they don't nest. These would not nest because of how I pressed it. Maybe I should press towards I don't think it's going to matter because it's a 9 patch. Anyway, press it however you want. I like spinning my seams. It makes for a flatter block, and whenever you go to iron it to quilt it, it seems better. And incidentally, if y'all are seeing the blue haze on my hand, I know I've got some on my fingernail, I'm not bruised. I'm okay. I dyed fabric yesterday. I tried indigo dyeing, and I learned a lot, and I will be doing it again, and it would be fantastic if I could do it live, but I just don't think that's going to happen because I will have chemical, and that stuff is really caustic. I'm going to have chemical on my hands when I wear gloves, and so it really wouldn't be feasible for me to interact with y'all. I don't want to mess up my electronic device. So, all right. Press towards the square. My seams are really laying flat today. Wow. Okay, now it's the time where I sew my rows together. This is what they don't tell you. When you are sewing and you're nesting your seams, to get your corners lined up really, really tight, it's best that your seam, let me think how to say this. I've nested my seam. Okay, and line up my raw edge. Alright, my raw edges are this seam. If I feed it into the machine with the top seam going towards the needle as I'm stitching, because there's a ledge back here on this seam and the ledge on this seam, it'll lock and it's not going to scoot. How many times have we put two flat pieces of fabric in the sewing machine and they end up somehow doing this? You can adjust that. There is a adjustment at the top of your machine. That is actually the pressure of your presser foot, and you can actually loosen that, and it'll make it to where you can adjust it for sewing real thick fabrics or sheer fabrics. If you ever sew on your sewing machine, no matter what kind you have, and you're sewing and it wants to arc, it means the pressure of your presser foot is too hard. You need to lighten the pressure by making your adjustment. Electronic machines do have the adjustment. You just need to find where your adjustment is. Okay, so I've got that ledge built into that. Now on this one, this one's going away from, so this one will not nest as perfectly as this one, but that's okay. All right. Raw edge is even, somewhat. Okay, that locked in there good. coincidentally, I don't have the standard foot control with the button. I had one of those featherweights. I liked the featherweight. I used it for about 4 years. I gave it to my mom. There's two things. All featherweights have their own personality. There's two things I disliked about it. One was the foot control. The foot control worked fine, but I found it hard to press on that little button when that other thing it sticks up, and it's to rest your foot on so you don't constantly have your foot on the other button. And then this screw, when you would thread it in and clean out your area and thread it in, it would be across, and so it would flip all my seams, and that was the two things I hated about that featherweight. This one I paid a little bit of nothing for, and this one doesn't have that problem, so I'm happy with it. Alright, so let's sew this last. Let's go ahead and spin the seams on this. So for those of you who've never spinned a seam, this seam is going to go this way, and this one's going to go this way. And so basically we're going to come up to it, and we're just going to pull, and any stitches that are there are going to rip. And then finger press. This one wants to go this way, this one goes this way. Okay, so we're going to finger press. Alright. So let's see how well I did. Okay, so that first seam is spot on. This one, it looks like it's a little bit off. It might be my HST, but you know what? If you get that far away, you can't even see it, so it doesn't matter. But I'm just telling you this so that it helps you. Alright, does it have to be perfect? Heck no. Alright, so on this one, if I were to feed it in the machine right like this, my first seam allowance is going this way. We want it to go towards the needle, so I'm going to flip this over, because that first one, if it slides, then it'll mess up the second one. If we can prevent it by buttoning those two up to one another, then it will prevent it. So I'm going to go ahead and feed this in the machine. Notice I'm not tugging or pulling on the fabric. I'm letting the machine do all the work. And again, hold your thread tails. I'm using Arfil thread, which by the way is phenomenal, because if you spin your seams, it automatically pops the seams open. It's great. When I use my Coats and Clark thread, you have to physically take the seam ripper and bust those seams open. Okay. To spin the seams. Alright, my iron died on me. So, we're ready to press. I'm going to say this is a success. Isn't that odd to see orange fabric next to this pretty blue fabric, which by the way was in my Open Gates quilt box, and which by the way I'm not making the project. I'm not a table runner type of person, so anyway. It would have made a beautiful wall hanging, but I'm not a wall hanging type of person either. I like making quilts or pot holders. And if I do make a wall hanging, I usually gift it away. Alright. Iron's ready. And because I'm not ironing, I'm pressing, all of my seams are already where they need to be. So I'm just pressing down on it with the iron. No movement, I'm just pressing. And I'm doing the back side first to make sure that where those HSTs are bulked up in the seam, that it doesn't go wonky on me. And then I flip it over, and I give a good press on the top side. And I am using my wool mat. I did not use my clapper, I left my clapper in the other room. See how flat this is. So the secret to this for HSTs is starch. Pre-starch your fabrics. Use your easy angle tool to cut your pieces, or you could use your AccuQuilt if you have a 2.5-2 inch finished die. No, yes, these will finish at 2. Duh. Will they finish at 2? Yes, they finish at 2. And that's another tip. When you sew 2 pieces of fabric together that you know the dimension and you always wonder why your blocks are not coming out, take the time to just measure. If you can lay the lines of your ruler up where the lines of your seam allowance is, that means that you're spot on. That means you've cut it right. That means you've got your right 1/4 inch seam. That means you've pressed it right. And it's lovely when everything falls together just right. So now we have 2 stars. Are there any questions? Brandy, are you there? Oh, sorry. No sound. Can y'all hear me? Probably should have done a sound check earlier. Alright, this will be a 2 inch. Let me go ahead and cut this down to 2 inches. And I'll probably get another, we might get one. Another scrap, toss. Let's see. Nope, this one's going to be a toss. Alright. Let's go ahead and pull out this gray. Alright, let's start over. For those of you that are here to make HSTs and this friendship star block, let's go contrast. Hey kitty kitty, what are you doing? No, get away from the iron, it's hot. Hey sweetie, get down. Let's see, let's go ahead. Now if I were to choose this is a little bit too close for contrast, so this would be perfect for maybe the red fabric or the dark black fabric. This one, I'm not going to select it. Let's go for something corny. Let's do this. The kitty had baby kitties 2 days ago. I don't know if you can hear their meows, but they're in there meowing. They're so cute. Alright. Right sides together. Line up your edges. Take your easy angle triangle ruler. Line up the 2.5 inch. By the way, these are pre-cuts. They're 2.5 inches. If you're using pinked edges, you can go ahead and make them and then square them up, or you can trim off the pinked edges to begin with, however you want to do it. Some pinked edges are so close you may want to wait until after you sew it. We're going to cut 4. That's a scrap. 1. Sorry, I've got to see light. My light is reflecting funny. Alright. 2. 3. And the last one, we need 4. I can't tell if that's lined up. My lighting is over behind me, which is never good. Alright. This one will end up being a scrap that I can cut for a corner for another block. So I'll go ahead and cut that. And then I have an 1.5 inches here I can play with for my 1.5 inch blocks. So while I'm here and got it, I'm going to use it. There. scrap. Now I've got a pile started for 2.5, 2, and 1.5. I'm also going to need to cut a 2.5-inch square for my center of my star. And then this can be trimmed down and put in there. We're going to see. I don't know if I'm going to do that just yet. Okay, so let's sew half square triangles. And ideally you can feed these in anyway. If you feed them in with the point first, then when you feed this one in, you have a gap here to where you're not going to accidentally sew them together. I've done that before. Da, da, da. Yeah. Happy Easter, by the way. It's Easter weekend. Before you know it, it'll be Mother's Day. So, incidentally, this is one of those clover thread cutters. You can wear it on a pendant. Actually, somebody hand turned this, and so I bought it from them. But this is made to go in the end of a spool, so you can use it as a thread cutter. These I think run about $5, and they're way cheaper than buying the great big plastic ones that may take up a lot of real estate on your table. I like this one because it fits nicely in the hand. It's just something different. Okay, so. And I'm going to press to the gray. Actually, let me check something. So we were talking about the seam allowances. So this seam allowance and this seam allowance. So this is how the seam allowances are the same. Turn it, yes. So the seam allowances are the same on each block, but if I turn this block like this, then these seams will nest perfectly. That's why I like spinning the seams. Okay. Another flat seam. You know, it could be just it's so humid out that the fabric just is tamed by the humidity. And I'm just finger pressing these with my fingernail. Alright, let's trim them down. I did better on these. I'm only have to trim 2 sides. Yay! Do y'all have an AccuQuilt? Do you use it? I find, okay, so this is what we do. My mom, she has an AccuQuilt, and then she has the baby, and then I bought the Go, and we tag team together, and we buy dyes, and then they are kept down at my mom's, so I probably don't utilize it as much as I could because it's just not convenient for me to go get it. But the reason why I like the AccuQuilt is for cutting curve seams. Just doing that on a ruler just seems ridiculous. And they're so accurate and they come out so good. Alright, so let's lay it out. Oops. Alright, and then that one's still under my needle, so let's use one of these from the previous block. And we'll do this one. And go ahead and cut a gray one for variety. Line on when you make your cuts. Alright. Okay, this is laid out. I'm going to start sewing my pieces together. Raw edges even all the way around. Forgive me if you've chatted and I have not seen it, because I can't see chat because the screen's facing away from me. So I apologize for that. If any of y'all are here, holler at me. Let's see. This one I need to trim. And this one's really wonky. Must have been talking too much. I noticed it's really nice out, so it's really warm and humid. It's that time of year. I think it's supposed to get up to 80 today, but all the garage sales are going on. I love a good garage sale. I haven't been in years, because I find that people are just sell their junk anymore. Okay, so there. No, that goes here. All right. And I do not sit, I stand a quilt, because I find my body, I can listen to my body easier when I'm standing than when I'm sitting. How many of you can get up from sewing for a few hours and just be, oh God, I've held my body in a weird position, but you don't feel it till you get up? I find standing tires me out to where I take more breaks, and so therefore maybe ergonomically better for me. I don't think the table height is the right height for the sit-down stuff, whether you have it on a table or you have a sewing machine table. I don't like it. It's always put a hitch in my get-along later on, so. Okay, we've nested our theme. This is almost a block. And again, this is utilizing pre-cuts 2.5 inches. You could use mini charms for the corners. You could also cut up your charm squares, and you would have to have 2 prints. Well, hang on. You'd have to have 2 5-inch squares to be able to make this work, if you chose the center to match. If you don't choose it to match, then I don't think it would matter. Okay. Quality control. I think there's a bunch of Easter egg hunts this morning. I think my foot controller is actually going out. It's an electronic foot control, and it has the same plug. I'll be sewing along and all of a sudden it'll stop, so I'll have to keep my eye on that. And I'm not afraid to fix it, by the way. Most things on these things can be fixed. Most things on all sewing machines can be fixed. You just got to know how to do it. All right. nicely. And we have another block, and I've spun the seams. I'll give it a good press. The blue might be a little bit overpowering. I see it on camera and I'm thinking, wow, that's pretty bright. But it's done now, so it's there forever. And incidentally, I was telling you I'm using my wool pressing mat. Normally I have all my pressing operations at the kitchen table. And somebody spilled ramen soup on the mat. Okay, we got it. So here we are. Looks like I've nested all my seams. For those of you who do have problems in nesting your seams, they do make an interfacing with square grid on the back of it that would be perfect for this to make sure that everything lines up just kosher. I recommend that for beginners. And then here's the back. All my seams spun. And the blue is very, very bright. That's okay. It's a neutral. It'll add interest. But anyway, as I was saying, so ramen noodle soup got spilled on my mat. And I was like, okay, I don't want to buy another one because the mats have gotten really, really expensive. So I said, well, it's wool. It can be hand washed. So I took it to the sink, and I'm going to do a video on this, I think, because we are led to believe these mats are wool. They are not wool. If you pay attention to the setting on your iron, this bothered me from the get-go. You pay attention to the setting on your iron, you have, let's see, what does mine say? Mine says silk, wool, then cotton, then linen. So wool is at a lower temperature than cotton, but we're setting our irons full speed ahead for the temperature. And I was like, why isn't this burning? Wool would, it would mess it up. So when I started washing this under the faucet, the water immediately soaked into the mat. And I did one side, I didn't do the other because I'm going to save that for a video. It instantly soaked in, and I'm like, what? Wool, if y'all don't know this, can be waterproof. So if you have babies that are in cloth diapers, you can actually put a wool, I don't know what it's called. They're not called diaper. They're like a wool legging that you put on your child, and if they have any leaks, the wool is waterproof so it won't migrate out. And I presume this is what they used back in the day. I don't know, because I wasn't alive then, but wool is waterproof. Everything used to be made out of wool. And I'm really disappointed because that mat is not made out of wool. I suspect it's felt with some wool in it. And I suspect when you get it and it stinks so bad, it's because they've glued all that together. I don't know. All right, let's try one more. We'll do a red. Let's do this. Let's make this one matchy-matchy. Am I gonna have enough for this? I've got a square here. Hang on, folks. I want to make sure before I cut this. I've got more over here. Never mind. I've got more. Doesn't matter. All right. I'm going to line up my edges. Cut with my easy angle. This is 2.5 inch strips, so I'm going to line that up on the bottom. Scrap. Trash, actually, not scrap, it's trash. Let's see. Okay. And I think I've had this ruler for about 10 years, so it's probably time for me to replace it. Yes, your rulers can age and it's not so graceful. So I had the good old standard OmniGrid, and I had 2 of those for about 15 years. Yes, I've been doing this for a long time. And I kept getting wonky cuts. And I'm like, I know I am up against this. What is going on? Well, come to find out, I found this out, and I think there was a video about this a long time ago. As you chisel down the side, your ruler becomes unsquare. So a test for this would be to set your ruler on your table, and if it rocks, it's not, the edge isn't flat anymore. Let's see. These are still good. This one was not. Let's see, do I have, supposed to be, I've got my, this ruler's wearing out so bad that the stuff's wearing off from it. I've used this ruler to death. Okay, these are still good, but I'm gonna have to replace this. By the way, this is the Doug Lico Simple Folded Corners rulers. This, my Easy Angle, and my 6.5 inch square are my go-to rulers for almost all my cutting. Alright. Alright, let's sew our HSTs. What are y'all making, by the way? I assume that y'all are sewing while I'm sewing. What are y'all making? And I don't know if y'all can see my shirt, but it's got a picture of an old sewing machine on it. And it says Varsity Sewing Team on it. And this is a new shirt. So I wore it to work one day, and I work with a bunch of people. So the bunch of people I work with, I don't even know thousands of people that I work with. That's how big of a place I work at. And this complete stranger guy stopped me, and he goes, "Excuse me, ma'am, I see your shirt." I'm like, "Yeah?" And I didn't know where he was going with this. I thought he was going to tell me something else, and he said, "You're just an old so-and-so." It cracked me up. I was not expecting that. And then I realized he called me old. Alright. Let's see how well I did on these. These are really wonky. Oh, some days. Okay, line on. I've got a sliver over here, nothing over there. Slivers all the way around. And incidentally, I love my Creative Grids ruler. I just recently got that within the last 2 years. And so I have no slippage. And if I do have slippage, it's my own fault because I need to change out my rotary blade. So the problem aspect is when I'm cutting and I get right about there, if my blade is dull, it'll actually move the fabric under the ruler at that corner. And so it'll mess up my squareness. So it's my own fault. Alright. Let's lay these out in the grid. And that's a nice dark one. That's interesting right there. ahead and let's cut a white one. And I have a spinning mat. I never use it, but the reason why I bought it is because it fits on my table. Alright. Oddball right there. Let's go ahead and make this here, and I'll put that one down there. You can hear the cars driving by outside. That one went by a little bit fast. And it's amazing the speeds they can get up to on my road because it's only 1 block long. That guy sounded like he's doing about 50 and the speed limit's 30. Alright, let's trim this one. And by the way, I am not promoting anything that I don't believe in, and I do not get any money for any of my sewing stuff. All of this is just totally me. I don't have it to where you can donate to me. I don't need donations. Everything I've learned, I'm trying to pass on that knowledge to those who need it and will use it. And there's some things I would have appreciated knowing earlier in my sewing stint, so it is what it is. I think that one goes like that. Yeah. Well, it looks like I got that seam wonky. We'll find out. And I would cut this on my thread cutter on my machine, but that thing is so dull. Whoever used that used the fire out of it before I got it. So, boy, that red is rich. And I think that's Christmas fabric, by the way. You can put Christmas fabric in any quilt. You can cut the pieces small enough. I've put Halloween fabric in a quilt that actually said Halloween. You can do that. You can get away with it because you cut your pieces up. People just aren't going to be paying attention to that. And it kind of becomes like an I Spy thing for the kiddos. And again, I'm finger pressing towards the squares. And this is my method for sewing most blocks that are pieced like this, and that's not including obviously foundation paper piecing. I find I make a big mess when I do that, but it is very enjoyable. Okay. Let's make sure that when you are nesting your seams, that first seam faces towards the needle on the top, the pressing of it anyway, and that will make sure that your seams will nest properly. That's another thing. My featherweight, it's got graduated sides of the feet. It'll actually grab and try and flip the seam too. That does get annoying, but this one doesn't do it too bad. If y'all press with your iron, you probably don't have that problem. I have that problem because I'm not pressing, I'm just finger pressing. All right. Press, press, press. My iron's dirty. I need to clean it. It's nasty. Whew. All right. We have another successful block. It's pressed really flat. I'm impressed. There's a piece of glass. I moved this to my end table, and my end table's got glass on top. And that's really reflecting the steam even better. I'm not even using my clapper. All right. Another friendship block. Spin the seams. And these would sew nicely into a row. And very, very scrappy. As close as we are to this right now, if I were to move across the room, let's say I'm standing in the doorway of any bedroom, and I look to the bed, which has a quilt on it, this blue is going to fade away. It's going to look more neutral. It might even look light blue far away. That's the fun with fabric and the play of the contrast. As long as it contrasts, it'll be fine. And so we've made 3 blocks this morning already. I can't count that one because I already made it. These go really fast, and it's just a 9 patch when you get down to it. Anybody can do this. You have anybody who has the right tools. If you have ever tried to do something without the right tool, it's very frustrating. All right. So I see I only have 2 of you here. I'm a little disappointed. But do y'all have any questions? Or questions about me? Or questions about quilting? Or problems you're having that you need resolved or whatever? Because I find I'm the fixer. I'm like that at work too. I'm the fixer. I'm the fixer of all things. So, anybody? Thanks, Patty. It is early, and the thing I'm having a problem with, I don't want to go live in a prime time slot because that'll either take away from Teresa Louise or Tiffany or Sobecca or whoever. I mean, it's hard. We're all jockeying for that time slot, and I don't want to take that away from them. And I also enjoy watching those ladies, so I don't want to take away from their spot. So, and one day I imagine that there'll be so many people going live that it'll be a pick and choose moment for every time slot. But I do want to respect that time. I know that I could probably go live before Mom and Pop Quilt Shop. Sometimes Sobecca goes live in the mornings on Saturday morning. I don't want to encroach on that. So I just picked a slot that was nice and early. This is when my family is all asleep, so I don't have anybody interrupting me, and there's no noise from any electronic devices. I have needy children, so there's no questions. I don't like getting interrupted whenever I'm on camera. And I don't want them to be on camera. I want that to remain. I want their identities to remain kind of camera's not in the face of the children. So thanks, Patty, for showing up. I see I have one other person if you just want to shout out. I appreciate y'all coming and visiting with me in my live. Is there any lives that I can do that you would like to see? anything. I want to do a live at the long arm, but the only problem is my signal strength is not that great in the garage, and I don't have an electronic device to read comments. Yeah, the easy angle. That ruler, I think I bought this 7 years ago. This was like a $9 ruler. It's not overly expensive. And this one says it's got Sharon Hultgren's name on it. I don't know. You can get these on Amazon. They're not expensive at all. And the thing I liked about this was you could take a 2.5-inch strip pre-cut and end up with a 2.5 HST. And most of the time you have to cut your fabric like 2 7/8 or 2 5/8. I don't like doing that because then it's not usable. I like all my strips to kind of be the same size, not varying sizes. So, oh, so you already have it. Well, you are gonna love this because, you know, I'm just showing 2 strips at a time. You know, you could actually put right sides together of 4 strips at a time and then make 2 sets. So yeah, it's great. I love this ruler. This is one of the best investments I've made, and when it wears out, I will gladly pay dearly for another one, although they're not expensive. And I'm trying to see, it says this is put out there by, it's called the EZ, so EZ, for those of you who don't have one, the EZ angle, and it's put out by simplicity.com. I don't remember it being like that. I have the Tri-Rex ruler, and I like that ruler, but I've also got the die for that on the AccuQuilt, so that one is the one that my red, white, and blue quilt, I did some banner type star edge, and that worked very, very well. And your AccuQuilt, you don't have to necessarily cut fabric. You can also cut paper. So I had some poster board that was red, and I did not want to cut my fabric and then put it on my design wall and then find out that I didn't like it. So I could just cut like some poster board up, and I was like, oh, I really like it, how I have it laid out. And I tried different layouts, and that helped me out a lot, so I didn't waste any fabric. So, all right, well, I guess I've been yakking on here for over an hour. I'm gonna let it go at that, and I would like to continue to do some piecing, although I'm not sure the next time I'm gonna go live. I'm trying to get a baby quilt done, and I've got one loaded on the long arm, which I posted that video earlier this week. And once I get that off and get the baby quilt done, I've got 3 more baby quilts to make. Everybody's expecting that, I know, so I got to get busy with that. And those of you that are new to quilting, making baby quilts is the ideal size because you don't get tired of making it, you don't get tired of quilting it, and if something horrible happens and you don't like it, the baby doesn't care. And usually the parents have no idea, and they love it usually. And so you can gain a great skill set. Yes, pandemic babies. The 3 people that are having children, one of them's it's a first child. Well, 2 of them it's a first child. The other 2 already have oodles of children. So one was a surprise, but yeah, pandemic babies, exactly. So great practice for that, and it would give you great practice if you did your quilting as well. So let's see. And last week I talked a little bit about my dowel rod. This is actually a pressing dowel rod, and this is where I put all my scraps that aren't quite the right size, and then this will be put in my string baggies to make some whatever. Anyway, I appreciate all of you coming, and I will try to go live in a couple more weeks. Probably won't be this next weekend, and I'll try and get some more content uploaded. It's very, very time consuming to do this, but I am enjoying it, and I am learning the tech side of things. So thanks for stopping in, and please hit the subscribe button and like my video. That really will help me out. And again, my goal with this, I have a good 10 plus years to retirement. Yeah, it's going to be more than 10 years probably, the way the economy is going. I want to slowly build my clientele online to where when I do retire, I can retire to my hobby, which isn't really retiring, and start doing things for the public. But right now, we're just doing it for myself, and enjoying the heck out of it. Thanks, Patty. Thanks, everyone, for watching.